going to start. Yeah, before we introduce the panelists, I'll just start off with a land acknowledgement. So SPNN is located on land that's the traditional homeland of the Dakota people. We're just a few miles north of Bedote, which is the coming together of waters. It's the site of both their genesis and their genocide. And we acknowledge that this land was stolen via the treaty in 1851 and remains stolen now. So we also acknowledge that the past is the present and as well as the future, and Indigenous people continue to live and contribute and create across this region and this nation. And because of that, I invite everybody here today to commit to actively doing work to decolonize our place in this world. Yeah, so I will pass the microphone to Shania, and she will go over the panel and introduce the panelists.
Yep, thank you, Alice. Well, welcome everyone. This is the third in a series of artist panels from SPNN. All are sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Minnesota State Arts Board. I'm gonna run through everything, but first I want to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So you guys can go ahead and unmute and introduce yourselves.
But I can go first. Hi, y'all. I am Yanni. I'm a filmmaker and puppeteer based out of Minneapolis. Really excited to be here. Slightly nervous, but definitely grateful. And I'll pass it to Ty.
Dope. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Ty. I prefer he, him pronouns. I am a puppeteer, poet, playwright, author, also based out of Minneapolis.
My name is Juan. I use she, her pronouns as well. And yeah, I'm also a puppeteer, educator, organizer, once filmmaker. But I guess I still do filmmaking too. But it's like, you know, on the side.
Thank you all. So here's a quick rundown of what our time will look like. We're gonna hand things over to our three filmmakers, our panelists in a bit, and they're each gonna talk about some of the work that they do and show us some samples. Afterwards, we'll open up the floor for questions. And a few quick reminders, we will be, as you can see, recording this workshop. It'll be added to the SPNN site at a later date for other people to learn from all their knowledge. And before we start, you might want to change your Zoom window to speaker view so that you can see our panelists as they're presenting without everything else on screen. And you can do that in the top right-hand corner of your Zoom screen. You'll see a button that says view, and then you can select speaker view. All right, so if there are any questions, please drop them in the chat box. And then without further ado, I will pass things off to our panelists. We're gonna start with Yanni, move on to Ty, and then end with An. All right, you can go ahead and start.
Thank you. So like I said, I'm Yanni. I'm a filmmaker and puppeteer based out of Minneapolis. I got my start in puppetry, I think as like most people as a kid, playing with dolls and creating stories and sets and playing dress up. I was the only girl and the youngest, so I had to make my own kind of world. And I kind of think that played to my advantage as an adult because like I mostly like gravitate towards things that I can do on my own, you know what I mean? So that's where it all began for me. Fast forwarding a little bit forward, in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I first started. I didn't know I wanted to be an artist, none of that. I spent a lot of time at MCTC just like discovering who I was and who I wanted to be. And during that time, my brother was going to school at the Art Institute downtown, finishing up his last year. And he was doing like a lot of product photography for his graduating year. And he ended up bringing me onto like a couple projects with him, and he introduced me to photography, and I fell in love with that. And I understood that you can create a story through like an image. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew that I liked it. So from there, I ended up transferring over to Mankato, and that's when I actually discovered that I wanted to be a filmmaker, because of like the lack of films that I wanted to see weren't presented, and my inspiration for Spike Lee, and the list goes on. And that's the only thing that really came out of Mankato for me. I ended up being like in a really deep depression over there, because like it just wasn't a place for me, and there was no community out there for me. So I ended up actually getting kicked out, and it ended up being like a blessing in disguise for me. So I ended up coming back to Minneapolis, and I started to like really connect with community and get locked in and network. And to this day, like there's not a nonprofit that I haven't worked at or haven't had a connection to in Minneapolis. And that kind of played into like me getting into puppetry. I walked into the Heart of the Beast probably in like 2015, and I was like blown away. Like there's like adults like making shit out of like regular objects. And I'm like, yo, this is a job. Like people do this for real, for real. And I never left, you know what I mean? Um, um, and that kind of brought me, I started working at Heart of the Beast in 2017 as a stage manager for a Mayday, and then stayed as an art teacher, and then became a puppeteer. And it wasn't like formal training at all. Like none of the folks in there are like got their background in like in artistry. It's like you learn from everybody there. You learn from the old to the youth. Like it's like the most magical place that I've ever been. And grateful for it. And then after that, 2019, I got my first chance to actually do a film. I did not do a film, but do some puppetry. And I led a group of puppeteers for the Full Moon puppet show. And that was ill to me because that was my first hand in it, and it actually introduced me to like what type of puppetry that I actually wanted to do. And what we did was like we mixed like bone raku puppets, we mixed big head puppets, and we also mixed like shadow puppetry. And I think that's what I really fell in love with, is like being able to mix all types of puppetry into like a set and creating a story out of that. And it was just ill. It was like the illest thing that I ever did. And I'm gonna show you guys like some images from that, and it's like 2 minutes. Let's see. Let me share. And that. Sorry, guys. Hmm. Hmm. And That, let me stop that. So like that was like my first introduction to it. And thanks, man. Thank y'all, man. And I remember like all of us was on in that show, and that's crazy how like life works. But like that was like my first touch at it, and I was like so blown away from that. And then after that, I ended up going back to school at Augsburg and graduating in 2020 with my film degree. And then after that, I got into the New Angles Fellowship at SPNN for documentary filmmakers to create their first like work in progress. And I did that, and just been working ever since. But I've actually, like, bringing us to present day, like I'm trying to figure out like how to fuse both my love of filmmaking and my love of puppetry within that. And like I found that I really love claymation art and like stop motion. So like right now I'm creating 2 shorts this summer. One is like completely claymation animation, and the other one incorporates some type of puppetry in it. So this is for my claymation. This is sketch. Yeah. And this story is about a displaced graffiti artist who has something to say, and he's mute. So he speaks only in art. And that's going to be like a 5-minute short that I'm trying to produce. And the second one, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I like fell in love with like doing armatures. Like I love building this shit. It's like so dope to me. But I'm collaborating with another artist, and he like does like 3D printing, and he made these molds of like these armatures. So like all of this is like printed out plastic, but it's so much more efficient because I spent hours like playing with wire, which is like great for me, but just to see that there's like other ways of doing shit. And it's like, I don't know, that's what I love about puppetry, because it's not one way, you know what I mean? And it's mad accessible, and it's like easy. And I don't know, this pandemic has really shown me like puppetry is like really the thing that I love doing, because it's like I don't really need anybody else. I have a story, and I can build the characters, and I can build the set. Like that's it. And I can edit. It's simple. And I feel like because of the pandemic, there'll probably be like, there's gonna be hella puppeteers and hella animation artists because of that, because of the accessibility. And I'm mad grateful for it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And I love doing it because it's, I don't know, this is me being a kid. Like, this is exactly who I am. So like, yeah, if I can get paid to do it, shit, why not? Why not? So yeah. Do I pass it off, or?
Yep, we can pass it off to our next
But,
guest.
and I think it's Ty or O.
Say that would be me.
But,
Hey, so I'm Ty. I already told y'all, author, poet, playwright, puppeteer. I'm just gonna share screen with you. I have a little presentation. I got a little nerdy with it. Just give me just one moment here. I feel like everyone's teacher in the pandemic, like, oh, just give me one moment to share my screen. Okay, hopefully we're seeing that. Can someone affirm via voice? Because I cannot see you.
Yes.
yes.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So hey, I'm Ty. I'm all the things I already said I am. I am the author of 4 forthcoming children's books and a poetry collection. I'm a Monkey Bear alumni, a Puppet Lab fellow, and I have the honor of working with Open Eye Figure Theater on many productions. When I'm not creating art, I enjoy reading, biking, playing and watching basketball, playing video games, listening to an absurd amount of music, and petting my adorable kittens, Alabaster and Hobbs, pictured below. No, go to the next slide. That's interesting. Oh, there we go. Okay, so a little history about my journey as an artist. My journey began, my journey with creating media has been extremely nonlinear. While I was always an artistic kid who spent time ignoring teachers in favor of making comics, like always in my own world. I was first formally exposed to the arts via my theater teacher, Jan Mandel, at Central High School. She found me at a time where I had very little direction. I was a little bit of a problem child, was always getting into it with teachers. And, you know, not only did she introduce me to playwriting, poetry, and acting, she also instilled in me a sense of bravery and agency. She taught me to wear my heart on my sleeve and to create vulnerable art that speaks to my personal experience as well as social issues. And really, she introduced me to my life's work, my reason for being, which it sounds corny, it sounds cliche, but that's just the truth of the matter. So again, this is where the nonlinear part comes in. From there, because I didn't really come from money, I graduated high school and my whole focus was landing like a real job, quote unquote. I quit doing anything artistic for the next 5 years, opting instead to work in education and behavior support. I moved out of my mother's house and then with my lifelong best friend, Monzi, pictured on the right. We didn't normally dress that way for work. It was pajama day with the kids. So we took it serious. And while I love the adults and children that I worked with over the years, there was always this sense that something was missing. I bounced between a lot of different workplaces before finally realizing that what was missing from my life was my first love, which is the arts. So that said, I first dabbled with puppetry in 2018 in a friend's show at In the Heart of the Beast Theater, before taking Monkey Bear's puppetry intensive and really learning the fundamentals of the craft. Not only was I learning from world-renowned puppeteers, I was doing so in the safety of a fully POC cohort. So from there, we'll get into my early career a little bit. I performed my first solo show at Pillsbury House Theater through Monkey Bear in the summer of 2019. Thanks to my training through Monkey Bear, it was a fairly successful show and it led to many more gigs. You know, the thing that people say about once you get one, you get them all. It's kind of true. So that year I went on to perform in Bare Bones, which is an outdoor puppet show that happens around every Halloween, Open Eyes Holiday Pageant, and the Full Moon Puppet Show, while helping with the shows of friends that I met along the way. I performed in my first full-length solo show through the Puppet Lab Fellowship in January of 2020. Given access to resources, a workspace, and mentorship, I created a 30-minute long puppet show that blended marionettes and shadow puppets. Around this time, I quit my job in order to dedicate 100% of my attention to landing gigs and making art. That is not a decision I would encourage everyone to do. It was very impulsive. But I was in a place where I was working 3 jobs and trying to put this show together. And it just got to a point where if I was going to do the show justice, I needed that to have my undivided attention. So though I was making far below poverty wages and just barely getting by on a ramen and oatmeal diet, and like I was hustling, y'all, like I was just kind of living gig to gig, taking whatever work I could find. But I was the happiest I had been in years, right? Because I was finally back in the arts. I was doing what I was passionate about. You know, everything was coming up Millhouse. And then y'all knew where this was going. The pandemic hit and theaters closed and I found myself wholly without work. Also, 90% of my socializing took place in Zoom or Animal Crossing, which is probably why I am the way I am today. It was around that time that I realized I needed a backup plan. My primary means of feeding myself couldn't be wholly dependent on cramming as many humans as possible into a theater. Both because I wanted to continue eating and because I wanted to reach a wider audience, I spent the summer of 2020 hiding in my room, working on poetry and children's book manuscripts. I wound up signing with my literary agent and dear friend, Savannah Brooks, in June of 2020. Not only does she represent my work, she pushes me to reach new heights as a writer. We sold my first book before the end of the year, and then we sold 4 more. Eventually, theater and live performance made a comeback, and I was able to return to helping my friends with various puppet shows and working with Open Eye Theater again, this time for their driveway tour show, The Amazing Cowboat, written by my friend and mentor, Liz Schachterly. You can see set up for The Amazing Cowboat picture below. It's this really cool show where it is this really cool show where It tours around to people's backyards and driveways all around the cities and brings puppetry to the people, making it much more accessible, because while puppetry is a beautiful art form, it can kind of live in its own little pocket of the world sometimes, and people aren't always aware of it. So this series of shows seeks to shift that. So nowadays, my practice continues to be a blend of different art forms. I continue to perform in puppet shows, though largely those of my friends and previous collaborators lately. And I also continue to write and make time for public readings and author visits to schools and bookstores. So getting into like the question of why, okay, but why do you make art? My passion for art is very multifaceted. In part, it simply helps me to process and make sense of the world around me. It always has since I was a depressed, angsty teenager. For example, my time spent writing poetry has helped me to make sense of generational and personal trauma, as well as the chaotic nature of the modern world. But what I really love about art is its ability to reach and resonate with others. Whether I'm performing a puppet show in a theater near exclusively full of older white folks, which isn't always the case, but it happens, or I'm giving a public reading of my book to Black youth, people are given the opportunity to connect with my humanity through art. Additionally, art in its many forms is how I attempt to create change in the world. It's always my hope that my art will help someone to either understand the Black experience or know they aren't alone in their struggles. And while my work covers many themes, there's usually a lesson at its core. You know, mental health issues, growing up biracial, Black Lives Matter, toxic masculinity. I'm always hoping that readers or spectators leave with something real. Again, super cliche, but if I were to grow old and pass away, knowing that my art has made the world even like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent better, that's the goal. You know, I'll be happy. And below are some pictures from my upcoming book that releases in May, Sarah Rising. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But why so many forms, right? This is a question I've been asked a few times. And I have a couple of answers. First, I'm a deeply creative person who gets bored easily, which is not to say that that's the right approach, right? Because there's something to be said for having your one art form and honing in. That's just not how my brain works. I get bored very easily. And so for me, it's really great to be able to switch between mediums as they call to me, rather than being trapped in a room just writing or just crafting puppets 24/7. Second, and perhaps more importantly, I found a lot of value in cross-hustling. Being a full-time artist is not easy, and it typically doesn't pay well, especially for early career creatives. So by having multiple forms I work in, I've opened myself to multiple pools of opportunities. I'm also able to reach different audiences by promoting my work in vastly different spaces. Readers might come to my puppetry performances, audience I've performed for my books, and so on. But do I have a favorite? Just like no full-time job is perfect, neither is any one art form. Everything has its pros and cons, and I'll do my best to try to break down some of those below. Obviously, this is all opinion. I'm not the final say-so in the pros and cons of puppetry or writing. But in my estimation, puppetry is a truly magical art form that blends performance and visual art into something wholly unique. That's a big part of why I fell in love with it. It is inherently doing 8 different things at once. It's also deeply collaborative by design, which is both a pro and a con. My worst artistic experiences were a result of bad collaborators, and my most joyous with great ones. And those are the people that I continue to work with day in and day out. Puppetry is also a very accessible art form. You can literally make a show out of garbage or things found around your house, and if you can pull it off well, it's art. Meaning that anyone, anywhere can make a puppet show. That said, sort of speaking to the con, well, I don't know if it's a con, speaking to the complications, I don't think the rest of the world understands how hard puppeteers really work. We wear many hats, from script writer to visual artist to director to voice actor to full body actor to puppeteer to publicist, and often a slew of others such as lighting designer or audio engineer. I think often when you tell people that your job is puppetry, they go, "Oh, okay, that's weird, like Geppetto, right?" But I mean, you're doing so much. You're doing so many different jobs all in one. So the biggest con, in my opinion, is that often puppeteers do all of this work while being criminally underpaid. So the flip side of that, though, is that wearing so many hats really forced me to develop many artistic skills, giving me the opportunity to discover what I was passionate about, or rather rediscover what I was passionate about and what was less exciting. For example, I learned that my favorite part of crafting a show was writing the story, which led me to pursue writing children's books. I also learned that while I love performing, it gives me severe anxiety, and I learned how to cope with that better. I also learned that I loathe video editing. It's very repetitive. It takes a long time. I'm not a patient person. I found my personal sweet spot with puppetry by largely taking gigs where I'm acting exclusively as the puppeteer. Gigs where the script is already written, the puppets are crafted, and I'm simply needed to come in and bring the puppets to life and give them some extra flair through voice acting. I found that that's the niche within the art form that I can really shine at. That said, I do have plans of writing a couple full-length puppet shows as well. I personally really love working in the art form when it's someone else's project, which might be an unusual thing to say, but I think it really gives me the opportunity to truly play without worrying so much about, oh my God, it's a midnight and the show's tomorrow and I don't have this puppet made and it's not working the way I want it to, or I really just get to play. And it also helps that in these scenarios, I have a guaranteed check. Not unlike a day job, I show up, I do what's asked of me, and then I go home to relax, right? I'm not required to spend hours or days grant writing and hoping that some board that doesn't do the work or maybe doesn't know the work decides I'm worth a couple $1,000s. That's a very real and stressful part often of being a puppeteer. That said, there's something really incredible about writing a script, crafting the puppets with your own hands, and creating an entire world out of nothing. One of my absolute favorite moments in my career was when I learned to craft a marionette from wood and other materials with the help of my mentor and puppetry genius, Kurt Hunter. Everyone has their different sweet spot with the work. And it's also worth noting that puppetry really taught me how to hustle, how to work hard on a project for months on end and make sure that I'm networking effectively and often. That's my little puppetry rant. On the flip side, the pros and cons of writing and publishing that writing. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to lump my fiction and poetry writing into the single form of writing. In terms of pros, what initially called me to the work, other than it largely coming naturally, is that a traditionally published book reaches a very wide audience when compared to local theater, at least if it does well. That's a whole other complicated nuance, but meaning my messages of hope are able to reach more people. That idea was really exciting to me. Additionally, again, it depends, but children's book writing tends to pay better. And not always, right? There are really sweet puppet gigs out there, but it's hard to find them. So, again, this was me sitting in the middle of the pandemic, trying to reroute a little bit and figure out how to make things a little bit more sustainable for myself. So that said, I found a greater sense of security in writing since I largely don't need to rely on grant money to write a book. I don't need a materials budget, nor do I need to worry about splitting a $2,000 check between 3 performers, right? I just need a word processor and some time alone. And I love time alone, so that works well for me. Although it should be noted that poetry is also criminally underpaid and undervalued in our society, much like puppetry. A con worth mentioning, in my estimation, is that publishing is super slow. My debut poetry collection was accepted for publication in 2021, yet it won't be in the world until 2024. Sarah Rising, my first picture book, was accepted in 2020, and it comes out this May. To work in publishing is to become an expert in patience, which can be particularly hard in a world that grows less stable by the month. Pros and cons, writing continued. I'm going to get into some show and tell in a minute here. This is just my little rant. Almost done. But editors and agents, this is another area that can be a huge pro or con when it comes to writing. You write your story and then you send it off to other people. So you inherently lose some of your agency over the story, as opposed to with puppetry, that's my baby, right? I can do whatever I want with my puppet show. But when working in traditional publishing, I have to send my baby out and let other people tweak it. A bad editor can ruin a book or completely strip it of your original vision, and a bad agent can ensure your work never sells, no matter how good it may be. That said, the existence of editors and agents has been a huge pro for me personally. Having a team of people dedicated to my work has been an amazing change of pace. My literary agent helps to sell my work. My editor helps to make it better. My publicist helps to promote the book. And my booking agent helps to land me gigs at schools and other venues. Aside from making me feel downright spoiled, all of this really allows me to focus in on my work and stop worrying about doing 20 different jobs at once, or again, wearing all these different hats. So talking about, my darling projects, I have an example of a puppet show that I made, a shadow puppet show, and my debut picture book coming out soon, just to show an example of both forms. So something that I'll always love about puppetry is the opportunity to come back to your work and continue to spruce it up over time. When I first created my debut show, The Lonely Half King, which you'll see in a moment here, I was still very much in the process of learning, and it was very much a work in progress. It was honestly pretty rough. Remember, this was my return to anything artistic in about 5 years. But I continued to recreate and hone it over various performances until it finally became something I could be proud of. The most challenging part of refining this show was the introduction of technology and filming. When theaters shut down, puppetry continued to some degree through pre-recorded puppet films. There was also some attempts at live puppetry during the pandemic, like over Zoom, and you can do it, but it doesn't quite work as well. So that is to say, video editing was a steep learning curve for me. I ultimately learned some rudimentary video editing skills and was able to send my work to a wider audience than ever before. So that was sort of the plus. I hate to call anything a plus in the pandemic, but that was what worked out well for me, is that now I had this pre-existing show recorded and edited that I could send out to Chicago. I could send it out to a puppetry house in Florida, So suddenly it was a lot easier to get my work out there. The show follows a chimera of sorts, part lion and part gazelle, wandering through the African savannah in search of a place to belong. It's an allegory for growing up as a mixed race kid. At the beginning of my journey as a puppeteer, I didn't consider myself a visual artist or a performer. I was just some guy trying something new in between food running gigs and behavior support. At the time, I was working 3 jobs, as I said earlier. So, I never would have imagined that my debut show would grow to become something pretty cool. Now I'm hoping this works and y'all can hear it. We're gonna see.
When one speaks of Africa, they often speak of the rolling savanna and the spectacular beasts within. When one speaks of Africa, they might mention elephants or zebras, hyenas, or lions, king of the plains, a ferocious incarnation of magnificence and power. The half-king often goes forgotten, for his appearance does not fit well into storybooks. For now, I ask that you challenge the norm and forget your reverence for purebred beasts. They already have their tales. This is the story of the lonely half-king and how he grew to find where he belonged. Once, there was a beast, comprised part of fang and the other hoof. He was quite the spectacle to behold, although this did not endear him to his fellow wildlife, who could never seem to make sense of his appearance. Most animals avoided him altogether for fear that he would gobble them up. In truth, he had no interest in the consumption of others. His only hope was a place to call home. And so he set out on a journey to find that place. He searched through an endless sea of grass that only made room for a tree or two until he came across another lonely, magnificent beast, a potential companion the size of an oak that reached to the heavens. However, upon speaking with the creature, the half-king realized that this giraffe had no intention of making friends. In fact, it seemed afraid and begged that he go away and take your frightening claws with you. And so his head hanging lower. The half-king continued forward. It wasn't long, however, before he saw hope in the distance, a flock of birds that perhaps an outcast could follow home. However, he quickly realized that this would not be the case. They called him many names: freak, furface, laughing all the while. But when he asked if he could travel with them, their laughter stopped. One brave bird landed atop his head. It said, "With those huge clumpy hind legs, there's no way you could come with us. Everyone would hear us coming. We'd probably be eaten by an eagle." And with that, they flew away, silent as they pleased. Now, thoroughly disheartened, the half-king wandered aimlessly. He was no longer truly searching for a home, and his body seemed to move on its own. Until he was startled out of this state by an unexpected creature. One tiny spider skittered amongst the sand. It said, "I've been following you, you know, and I don't think you're a freak at all. Follow me," said the spider. "I'll show you exactly what I see." The half-king did as instructed and followed the spider for a time. They went through the shifting sands and up a treacherous hill, but as they reached the top, the half-king realized that something was amiss. He couldn't see the spider anymore, and the ground beneath him did not feel all that stable. In fact, the half-king was falling. He fell for a time and found footing at the bottom of a hole, a nasty hole filled with worms and dirt and other unpleasantness. He realized that he would be in need of help. He yelled and he yelled for someone to save him, and at first, no one came. Then, at the top of the pit, he saw the giraffe, who said, "Use your scary claws to climb out of the pit." He saw the bird, who chirped, "Use your huge, clumpy hind legs to leap out of the pit." And lastly, he saw the spider, who said nothing. The half-king agreed that their ideas seemed solid, and so he squatted low and leapt out of the pit. The half-king was free. "You see?" asked the spider. "You're no freak at all. You are a truly magnificent creature that even I could not trick for long." And with that, the spider scuttled away. The giraffe had wandered onward, and the birds had flown off into the distance. The half-king was alone again, but this time he wasn't sad. He had realized his own greatness and no longer needed the comfort of a herd to feel at home. The half-king continued on his way, his head held high.
Yeah, so that was The Lonely Half King. That was the first show I ever made. I returned to my cat is in a bag. So if you're hearing a lot of noise, that is a paper bag wrestling around with a kitten inside it. But yeah, that was my first show, and I revisited it multiple times just to spruce it up. It's funny, whenever you perform your work, you see more things that you can heighten. So I'm already back in that headspace of, well, I could go tweak this and I could make this a little better. But yeah, that's that. So my next darling project is a picture book. My plan here is to actually share this picture book with y'all and then conclude my presentation. So Sarah Rising was probably the most difficult project that I've created in terms of getting started. In the height of the racial uprising, I decided I wanted to write This cat, a book about it in order to contextualize the historical event for young readers. There was so much misinformation being spread like wildfire at the time, sometimes by what we consider reputable news sources. I wound up banging my head against a wall in terms of the concept for a long time. I was very stuck on how best to write such a difficult story for young people without traumatizing them, right? To make a long story short, I eventually decided to write about a little girl attending her first protest with her dad. And if I did this right, we can switch over. Might need to, yeah, there we go. And then, great. This book isn't technically out yet, so what you are seeing is an advanced reader copy. So there are some things that might appear in this work that aren't the final product. I feel like I'm required to say that. Such as the dedications, which were to come at the time. But my morning started like any other. I ate most of my toast before running out the door to find food for my pets. Once I found enough leaves, I fed them to my beetles, and I put some toothpaste in my ant farm. They like it. Don't tell my dad. Oh. With everyone fed, I started getting ready for school. But then Dad came into my room. He said I wasn't doing classes today. Sarah, we're going to a protest, he said. Dad told me that the police had killed another Black person. They're supposed to serve and protect us, he said, but they hurt us instead. That's why we have to keep each other safe and stand up for what's right. Soon, we saw a huge crowd of people. They were all shouting for justice. I grabbed Dad's hand and we walked into the crowd. It was loud and scary, but I knew I was safe with Dad. He held my hand tight and began yelling with the crowd, "No justice, no peace." I almost shouted too, but then a monarch butterfly flew right past me. I followed the butterfly as it fluttered above the crowd toward a big building, until it flew right in front of a cop's face. He jumped back like he was stung by a wasp. He smacked the colorful monarch out of the air. It fell to the ground and didn't get back up. I knew I had to do something. We have to keep each other safe and stand up for what's right. I ran toward the butterfly. The cop started shouting, "Get back," he roared. He looked at me like I had done something wrong. I ran back into the crowd, pushing past people as tall as trees. A cop's job is to protect us, so why do they hurt us instead? I ran until I felt safe. And then I realized I didn't know where Dad was. I was scared and alone. I shouted for Dad for a long time, and for a long time, I didn't find him. Suddenly, one of the very tall people knelt down. Their face was full of worry, and they were holding a big sign. They asked if I needed help, and I told them what had happened. They let me sit on their shoulders so I could see over the forest of people. They kept me safe while we searched and shouted, but we couldn't find Dad. Until suddenly, I heard my name. Then I saw him. I jumped down from my person perch and ran to give Dad a big hug. We stayed at the protest for a while. This time I held his hand tighter and yelled with the crowd, "No justice, no peace." We got home just before the sun went down, and after dinner, I went straight to bed. I wasn't really sleepy. It had been a sad and scary day, but Dad said, "It'll be okay. I'll keep you safe just like you kept your butterfly safe. The sun will rise in the morning like always." And it did. In the morning, I ate most of my toast before running out the door. I fed my pets their favorite snacks. And after a few days, my colorful monarch was all better. I set it free outside and watched it fly far away from anyone who would hurt it. And that's the end. That's just a bunch of boring stuff about my life. Y'all can get the book and read that later. That's what I had prepared. That's me. Thanks so much. I hope I didn't take too long. Yeah, appreciate y'all's time. Ready for questions later.
All right, I think that means I'm up, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Yanni. Yeah, I love hearing what y'all talking about because I'm definitely gonna riff off of what you said. But yeah, I'll show y'all two pieces that I've made that are puppet films. One is a shadow puppet film called Jimlak, and then I'll show you another piece that I did this winter called A World Without a Need for Police. And it's also inspired by, the killing of George Floyd and the uprising and, our kind of efforts to think about a world that may have, that would not have police and have like other ways to create safety. But yeah, I'll just kick it off with showing a video. So I'm gonna start with the shadow puppetry piece. How do I do this? A Chrome tab. There we go. Okay.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Where was I when you needed me? You were so lonely, if only I'd reached out to know you. Where were you? We could barely speak. If I tried harder, I'd live in your language to love you. Hey, come back here!
Thi, đi thôi. But why? Is that you? But you look so young.
Đi thôi, đi, đi.
Wait, but why? Where are you going?
Cool. All right. So that's a little bit of the film. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. Again, it's called Jim Lock. We made it for the Minnesota Opera. And by we, right, it's not just me. It was main creators were my friend Charlie McCarran and I. And we've known each other since college. But he wrote the music for it. And I wrote the story for it. And so then he kind of based it off the story I had and wrote the lyrics for it too. I also did the visuals for it along with my friend Andrew Young. So we both did the visuals for it, made all the puppets, all the things that y'all saw. And then, we had some incredible performers, including Ty right here, was one of the shadow puppeteers, Li Ping Vong. And then the singers were Lady Midnight, if y'all know her, amazing. We've got a show coming up April 7th. We're doing some shadow puppetry for that. And then also Monique Wynn as well was the grandmother voice. But yeah, I was going to tell you a little bit about each of the shows and just kind of like give you my feelings on why puppetry and film and what's kind of like the unique opportunities with it and like challenges and like if you want to do it yourself, and I like, yes, please do, because both of the medias, the art forms are so interconnected. Kind of just like my feelings on what works and what are good practices. But yeah, like Ty, I'm also gonna do a little nerdy PowerPoint. I don't know. Okay, hold on a sec. Well, okay, if I just share a tab and there's no video, I think it should work, right?
Friend, I can't hear you if you're talking right now, but I can see your slide.
I'm muted. Okay, wait, how do I do this? How do I share my slideshow and not be muted? Is it because it has to be another window?
You might have to unmute like right after you share. That might work.
Okay, I feel like it didn't let me. Okay, let me try it again, y'all.
I
That's what I
also
was like.
did. I shared when I shared screen, I just did desktop one, like just
Okay.
instead of clicking the actual window. Maybe that helps.
Okay. Oh, that's probably it. Okay, y'all can still hear me, right? And then I can see my desktop. I can see the. Yes. Okay. Wow. 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 Great. Okay. Thank you, friends. Yeah. Before I launch into it, yeah. So I'm a puppeteer as well, educator and organizer. Kind of like Yanni, I got my start. Well, I guess it's like the opposite. I got my start in filmmaking. And I love filmmaking again because just like puppetry involves writing, it involves visual arts. You've got music, sound, right? You've got all the art forms, and it just like creates this really dynamic experience. But also, I am an educator during the day, which unfortunately in our world requires a lot of like sitting in front of the computer. So I did get a little bit burnt out on like in being in front of the computer so much. And I just love making things. I was also doing a little bit of stop motion animation, but I do find it to be very tedious and very like kind of just like painstaking, but I don't know, every art form also just, I also make a ton of, you have to make all the puppets in the entire world. So I don't know, it's like its own form of tediousness, but the tediousness I prefer is making all the things, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, that's like the picture on the left is a picture of this giant phoenix we made during the uprising, because we were just thinking about that Octavia Butler quote, which is like, you know, before we can rise from the ashes, we must first burn, right? And so what is the chance for us to create something new? And so we made that giant puppet in the Heart of the Beast style, you know, like Yanni had said, like, I think Heart of the Beast is a special place for a lot of us because they do so much community puppetry. So if you all want to get into puppetry, highly suggest hitting up Heart of the Beast or Open Eye Theater as ways to get involved into puppetry. Yeah, and we had that at a protest. And then the picture on the far right is the youth I work with at the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center. And then the picture in the middle is a little shadow puppetry, which I'll talk about later. And that's my friend Andrew in the middle. Okay, how do I, oh yeah, woo, okay. I really love this quote, and I think it's a guiding principle of a lot of the art I create. It's from Ricardo Levins Morales. So I believe that art changes culture. And it is a powerful tool to change culture. So a lot of my artwork and a lot of my puppetry is inherently very political. So I love art and I love a good story, but for me, it's got to be, you know, there's a deeper purpose. So trauma imposes on us a lot of false narratives of us being bad or colluding whoever abused us, and that's why dictatorships always try to control or suppress the arts, because they would much rather have our cause of people's discomfort and pain remain mysterious, unexamined, off the table. And yeah, again, as an artist, I think that's like, you know, a job that we have is, you know, how can we fight a lot of like false narratives around us, you know? People don't face addiction because they're bad people. They don't face addiction because they're lazy. People are poor because they're lazy. People are poor because they're not getting paid enough because corporations potentially are making a lot of money off of us while they're making a lot of money. And so again, that is the role of the artist, I believe, is to interrogate all that. Yeah, so Chimlak, if you would believe it or not, it's a little bit of that. So it happened during the pandemic, and like I said before, we were super lucky that Miniatures is a program that the Minnesota Opera put out there, and they, you know, they want to get, you know, more POC folks involved in opera music, and they also want to bring opera to like the next generation, the next folks. Besides, we know that opera in the US is very white, it's very Eurocentric, and they're like, actually, you know what, opera, all it is, it's a live theater event, right? Or it's a live I guess it's not, this was an opera film, but it's a story that's told primarily through music. And so they gave us a blank check to say, like, y'all make whatever you want to make content wise, but it just has to be primarily told with music. And so this is a process that I use, which is really beautiful, which is art is all about metaphors and visual metaphors, and that's like a strength that puppetry has. Is you know, is there something that you're experiencing, and how can that be expressed visually? And so during the pandemic, I was you know, like we were all isolated, and my folks were definitely isolated, and I was just noticing like the cultural divide and generational divide was stronger between my parents and I, and that caused me a lot of sadness. And even when I was like recently on vacation with my folks, there was so many times we were just getting into fights, and I know part of it was just we couldn't understand each other. And so I think that's like a sadness of somebody living in diaspora, is that like you're, you know, like Ty had mentioned, if you're a mixed race person too, is like you're stuck in between worlds. And so there's this beautiful symbol of the Chimlak bird, which is a symbol on old bronze Vietnamese artwork. And it was pre-colonization, pre-Chinese, French, American colonization. And so they don't know what that symbol means, but like people who live in diaspora have like reclaimed that symbol, and they say, you know what, that symbol is ours. That's representative of who we are, and it's important, and we don't know what it means, but we're going to redefine the meaning. And so I think that's a beautiful symbol. And again, metaphor is a powerful way to tell stories, especially puppetry. So I'm going to share a little puppetry storytelling tips. And this is what like my guiding principles. And I learned a lot of these principles from a mentor of mine who's a mentor of Ty's as well. So it's Liz Shatterly. But she always encourages, if you are wanting to incorporate puppetry, you got to ask yourself, why puppetry, right? What can you do with puppetry that you couldn't do with like human actors, right? Sometimes like another friend of mine calls them like meat puppets, humans on the screen. So like you've got like a film, right? And you have a story idea, and like maybe the film is really simple. It's about two friends and they're just having like a spectacular day, right? So if you want to have a spectacular day, it could be based in reality, but how are you going to use puppetry to tell that story, and why puppetry and why just like humans on the screen? And so one thing that's really cool about puppetry is that you can embrace the impossible. And so like the film y'all just saw, I got to do things that I can't do when I was also telling my stories with my traditional filmmaking background. I wanted to tell stories about my family's history, and I couldn't do that because it took place in Vietnam, right? And I was like, man, I'd have to get a huge crew. I'd have to I'm in Minnesota now, right? So it limited the stories I could tell. And that's, again, why I love stop motion and puppetry, is because you can embrace the impossible and you can tell all sorts of stories. And then you can also, again, you can tell realistic stories, but, you could be, someone can have the feeling like maybe they're really stressed out, right? And they're just about to take a test. Maybe this is like taking place in a school and it's all based in reality. But like, what is that feeling of being stressed out, right? Could you do some cool visuals there, right? Could suddenly they feel like they're sweating and the walls are closing in on them, right? Puppetry could help you do that. So that's cool. And then another thing to think about is, with puppetry, you've got to move that puppet around, right? Stop motion is cool because you make the armature and then you move it, take a picture, and you never see how it's moved. With puppetry, you have a person moving it, right? With marionette, you've got the hands, maybe. I guess with the shadow puppetry, you didn't see it, but you behind I guess, the puppeteer is not acknowledged; they're not seen. So you'll see the other show. You can also acknowledge the puppeteer. So that's something you can do. And sometimes that's cool too. Maybe sometimes the puppeteer is like a part of the film, right? Y'all see that sometimes with like Muppets. And then what type of puppetry is best to tell your story? Is it marionettes? Is it shadow puppetry? The reason why we use shadow puppetry with that particular story that y'all just saw is because it's in the past. And so I think that shadow puppetry has this quality of being very dreamy and otherworldly. And so sometimes it's like a little bit more poetic, and sometimes it's even more serious. People consider it that way. Yeah, and then again, like you'll see, like the Muppet style puppets, they're very goofy and funny. And so sometimes that is like helps you tell a goofy story. So you can consider like the tone of your show. And then again, puppetry is a visual storytelling technique. So this is like something I constantly actually have to work on, because I think part of my world is so much in like the education background, and I'm all like, I've got to be clear and precise, and I got to like write grant reports. And so sometimes I'm like too much in the word world. And so I actually have to push myself to do more of the visual storytelling. And how can you show the story and not just tell the person? You're not telling them this story is about the pandemic. You're like, okay, you're seeing a person lose their grandmother, and you're seeing them grieve, and you're seeing them not being able to communicate with their grandmother. So yeah, those are some techniques and tips that I want to share with y'all. That's my friend Andrew. I also was like, I don't even know if people know how that was made. I should probably tell y'all how that was made. But yeah, you can see Andrew is using an overhead projector before? Type it in the chat, probably. Back in ye day, y'all are a little bit older. We used to, maybe, yeah, maybe Ty did that. Like he had like the overhead projector, and you'd put like a plastic piece of transparency on the bed of the projector, right? And then it projects it really big, right? So that's super cool because you can see in Andrew's hand, he's got like a little puppet in his hand and he's moving it around. And so that's really easy with our film. Is shadow puppetry translates really well to the film world because it's already flat and it's two-dimensional, and it relies on like a lot of contrast. And so sometimes you actually don't even need like the best camera, right? Because yeah, your lighting is pretty like straightforward. Whereas if you're doing 3D puppets, your lighting's got to be great. Yeah, so shadow puppetry, if you're starting with puppetry and film, it's a good place to start. Okay, so fever dream or intentional storytelling. This is some feedback that I got when we made the film, or when we started storyboarding. So I always start with storyboarding and kind of like an outline and concept of the film. And I was like, it's gonna be visual storytelling. It's gonna be really cool, and I'm gonna like totally like make it impossible. And so we just like thought of like cool moments. We're like, oh, if this character is like falls back into time, and like what could she do? Well, she could ride turtles, and she could do this, and she could do that, and then we like presented our story. And the big feedback that we got was like, someone's like, it honestly just feels like a fever dream of moments that are strung together. They're like, I'm not actually sure like what the point of the story is and why should we care? Like, because they were like, we're following this character, she's running after her grandmother, but why do we care that she's running after her grandmother and trying to get her grandma to slow down and talk to her, right? So what y'all don't see with the story is that she's kind of confused, and she feels actually really guilty that her grandmother died, and that she wasn't there when her grandmother died. And so she wants to be able to communicate that with her grandmother. But again, her whole life she's struggled to talk to her grandmother because they don't speak the same language. So they gave me this like really great feedback. This was David Hansel. He said, "What's at stake, or what's motivating the action, and how is each moment raising the stakes of the action?" So this is a method of storytelling. We know there's lots of methods, but this was kind of a cool one. Is to get your viewer engaged, is like to raise the stakes, sort of, ooh, what's going to happen next, right? So that's like a very traditional style of storytelling, but I don't know, I like it. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to show you another video. I'm not going to go to that slide. This video, y'all, is like I said before, I made it after the killing of George Floyd, and I just, like a lot of people, I was like, I'm done. We're done with Black people being killed. We're done with people being killed by the police. And also, like, I personally felt like the police weren't doing a great job at like keeping us safe, right? And as a youth worker, I was also seeing like the best way that I could support young people into having like happy lives where they could choose whatever they wanted to do and be happy and make money was through education and mentorship. And I was like, why are we all having to grind and hustle for grants and the cops don't? So this is what this video piece is about, and it's made with Muppet style puppets. Okay, so I'm gonna try this again. New share. Okay, wait, I think I have to stop. All right, hold on. How do I do this? Do I just... Wait, could y'all see my window with everyone's faces plus this at the same time? Was that what was happening? Okay. How do I... Yeah, this is funny. Okay, wait. I've stopped sharing my screen. Is that right? Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to... All right, yeah. Okay. All right, here we go.
part was when Wenwu was like, I've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice.
Yeah, that was pretty good. My favorite part was when Shang turned to Aquafina and said, "What? Oh,
Bye.
hey, you! Whoa! Drop those coconut rolls!" Oh, rats! I lost him.
Bao, we've been robbed.
Oh no! Oh, he took all the coconut rolls.
And the bang bao.
Oh, and the money.
The Cafe du Monde.
And the money. Quan, he took the cash register. Oh, Phony, we need your help.
You rang?
We gotta call the cops.
No.
What are you doing? I said we gotta call the cops.
What are you doing? What are you gonna say? Hi. An Asian person whose face we couldn't see just robbed our store. This is 8th Street. They can't tell us apart. They're probably gonna end up arresting me.
Ah, fine. Wait a second. So, how are we supposed to get our money back?
I don't know. I just don't want this to lead to more violence. Remember that time they followed you home from the liquor store? You weren't doing anything. You could have ended up like Fong Li.
Well, sometimes you gotta crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
Are you the egg in this situation?
I'm just saying, if every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs.
Well, I'm not asking for the police to be perfect. I'm just saying, at the very least, they could be less aggressive and less racist.
Okay. Here we go again. No cops. Oh, free college, free jobs. Bernie 2024.
You're misquoting me. I said Bernie 2044. You know, after we cryogenically freeze him and put his brain in a younger, smarter, maybe hotter robot body.
Oh, Kin. That's about as ridiculous as living in a world without police.
You might as well wish for pizza for breakfast, money that grows on trees, clouds that rain ice cream, a world without police, a troop of dancing hippos, a cure for every disease, an end to world hunger, a world without police.
First of all, you can have pizza for breakfast. They're called bagel bites. And why can't you take me seriously?
Fine. Let's hear it.
Really?
Yeah.
See, it's jobs and affordable housing that help our communities. There won't be crime when all of us can meet all of our needs. Quality mental health care without exorbitant fees. Yeah. We all can make it happen. A world with no need for police.
So,
All right. Thank you. That was A World with No Need for Police. Also starring Ty, as Phony the Phone, and Zach, another character named Zach. and Li Ping Vong, and me as Bao the dog. And Josh Dyrud did the film for it, the videography for it. And Charlie McCarran, again, did music for it. I just always want to say that because, again, you know, making art is like a Herculean effort and requires so many people. Cool. So, yeah, a little bit about that piece I wanted to share and kind of its unique challenges. Okay, hold on a second. Fun fact. Wait. Oh, there it is. Fun fact. In the puppeting world, sorry. Muppets are kind of like a divisive style of puppetry. Some people really like them, and like it's kind of like fandom. And then some people like hate them because so many people love them, and it's like kind of uncool. But whatever, I like them. You know, it's all good. But I think that's always funny, like funny tea to spill. But anyways, so edutainment. I think this piece is interesting because, yeah, I basically like sat down with like a lot of books, and there's a report called the MPD 150 report, which is like looking at 150 years of history on policing and how they feel like it doesn't work. And I was like just sitting there with like all these like facts. I was like, I gotta write something. I gotta like convince all these people, because like as you're reading all this, like all these like this information, right? You're blown away by it, and it's so enraging. And so the first script I wrote had like tons of facts in it. And I was also just like constantly asking myself if I was getting it right, and if I was really creating something that would convince people and change their minds. And also like, am I offending anyone? And it kind of mirrored me. And I also was writing this during the pandemic. Like I just like got completely shut down and just like stalled for a while. Because yeah, it's just like, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. But also I do care about it. So of course it's gonna be a lot of pressure. But yeah, somebody again gave me this feedback. Those like, how can you tell the story by showing it and not just like saying things. And then of course, if you're trying to create something that's like more explicitly political, how can you balance information with story? And I don't know. I still look at this and I wonder if there's still too much information. I wonder if it should just be a story, and people will pull the meaning out of it. I don't know. But it's a hard balance to strike. And so if you're ever making a piece like this, I kind of consider it like something more like John Oliver's like Last Week Tonight or something, or The Daily Show. It's something kind of in between there, where I'm trying to be very explicit with the information I'm giving while also watching a show. And I also know that sometimes people's eyes glaze over when they hear a lot of facts. So I tried to make it entertaining. I tried to make it really funny. And I thought if there was Muppets on screen, that people would be like kind of willing to pay attention more. And then also I thought if I threw music in there, people love music, right? So I feel like they're vitamins, and people will like eat the vitamins if there's like sugar covering the vitamins. And then where else was I going with this? Yeah, I don't know. It's a piece that I still like feel weird about, but also I feel really proud about too. And other things I learned about this when making this piece with Muppets is that something that's interesting about them without shadow puppetry is that, I don't know, when you're in the theater world with puppets, I think that you're like so entrenched and like you have all this ambiance. But when you're watching a film, it's a little bit more realistic. So you can see all these tiny details. Like you can see the pin. I see all these little details I missed. Like, oh, you can see the pin in the puppet. And so you don't have that ambiance to build off of. So I think with film, you kind of have to work a little bit harder to engage people because it feels a little bit more realistic. So I think that's like a difficulty of using puppetry in film, and it's just something to consider. But yeah, that's kind of. And then lastly, as a parting thought, something that I find really powerful when making puppetry and film, like I've talked about before, it takes a lot of people. So community is really important. So find your people. Collaboration is more fun, and co-working is more fun when you find people who you can trust, and people who can give you critical feedback, but also be supportive. And so again, with this piece itself, I had so many iterations of it. And I'm really thankful for that as well, because I wrote it like last fall for bare bones. And so I had like a kind of like a loose version of it. And then I got to do another version of it because Coalition for Asian American Leaders, they were having a popular education style workshop, and they're like, we want to talk about police abolition as a concept, but again, we want for it to be accessible. So I was like, I got you. I already have this piece made, and so I got to workshop it further. And then on top of that, I got another opportunity with Monkey Bear's Harmonic Workshop. They were like, hey, make a film. It can be about anything. So I was like, great. I'm going to use that thing I already wrote, because like Ty has said, puppetry is very time intensive and time consuming and labor intensive. So how can you take something that you've already made and reuse it, right? And rebuild on it to pay yourself actual livable wage. And so I actually did this piece 3 times. There's 3 iterations of it, and each gig that I got gave me a unique opportunity to build on that. But it was also hard too, because sometimes the gig was like, okay, but we want to make sure that it's actually Asian people. Okay, but we actually want to make sure that it includes a business, right? So I had to tweak it, but I think in the end, I got something that I was really proud of, and I paid myself like an okay wage. So yeah, if you're interested in the gig life, I can talk more about that. But I found ways to make it work. All right, and that concludes my presentation. Back to you, Alice.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, those presentations were great. So we are now entering the Q&A portion of this panel. So feel free, audience members, to put in any questions you have in the chat. We'll give it like a minute or two. If no one has any questions, me and Shania have prepared questions.
I mean, I can answer this partially. How did you learn storyboarding? I mean, for me, hold on, now I'm trying to think if this is true. Yeah, this is true. I think I first learned it at Monkey Bear, the workshop that we were talking about rather, teaching BIPOC folks how to puppeteer. I think that was the first time I really learned the importance of storyboarding, again, from Liz Howells. Yeah, but I don't know if other folks have their own answers.
I think for me, storyboarding is mad important in filmmaking. I learned it in college. In creating like shot lists, it makes life a lot easier when you know what you are going to shoot and what you need to shoot. So that's where I learned storyboarding from.
You know what? I also feel like I learned it in college. There's like too many things you were learning in college. So I actually learned it better when I had to teach it. So there's YouTube is great. YouTube. You learn anything on YouTube. But there's a really, actually Pixar. I can try to find this link because Pixar has a great like link on storyboarding and yeah, like visual storytelling. So I'll try to link it right now. Yeah, but the internet's great for that. And also inherently, you kind of know how to do it. Not inherently, but like sometimes we like forget that we know how to do stuff, right? Like we all draw pictures, right? So just like thinking about like each scene and this happens and this happens and this happens.
I'll speak on the hacks for inexpensive gear. Your phone is really great. They have hella great apps for stop motion on here. A simple tripod, you can get that for like 20 bucks, probably cheaper. Lighting, sometimes you think you need like super expensive lighting, but you really only need like this a simple lamp, a desk lamp, and a couple of those, and you have great lighting. I promise you that. Cardboard is great for building sets and most things. So yeah, that's one of my gear setups and hacks for stop motion.
Yeah, I'll say that I would start with there's like a bunch of free stop motion animation softwares. Actually, the coolest thing to start with is your phone if you have it, because already it does two things. It's got a camera built in the back, and then when you're if you're doing it like a 3D version or like a flat 2D stop motion animation, you'll see like a live view of your of what you're animating, and that's really nice because a lot of the programs you do is you're moving it, and they'll show you the last picture that you took, and it'll show it as like a ghost image, and then you'll be able to move it, and you can see exactly how much you move it. So a lot of these programs, if you just Google stop motion animation software, there's free ones you can download. And I feel like Spin used to have a class and probably has resources online, but I can also link some of those. But Stop Motion Studio, there's like a free version of it for your phone. And then I think it's like $5. And again, there's a bunch of other free stuff. If you get to the pro level, something like it's like a pro consumer is Dragon Frame Animation. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of folks use that. But yeah, just like even just a desk lamp, you know, or a desk lamp is pretty good. Or just the natural sunlight. You just have to film during a part of the day where the light's not changing a ton.
When you say what editing program do you use, are you still talking about stop motion or video editing, audio?
I use Premiere. I would like to get into Avid, but baby steps.
I'm not one of the filmmakers here, but I was using Sony Vegas Pro just because it was something that was introduced to me a long time ago when I was young. So I just kind of stuck with what I knew. That said, my edits weren't as glamorous as some other folks's. But yeah.
Yeah, God, there's like tons of, again, it kind of depends on what level. You want free? Do you want like to pay a little bit of money? Do you want to pay a lot of money? If you have an iPad, you know, like, what is the program called again? Yanni, do you remember? I can't even remember what it's called.
Which one?
The iPad program, like.
Oh, iMovie. Is that iMovie?
iMovie. It's iMovie. How did I forget that? Yeah. iMovie is good, you know, and then you can, if you have an iPhone, the same thing. And there's just tons of like tablet and phone-based programs. But also I use DaVinci Resolve, and that program is free. You can't export 4K, but for free. I think maybe it has a watermark, but you can like crop it out, or maybe it might be all over it now. But it is free, and it's really robust. It's like a pro-consumer program, but you know, like you just have to know if you have your computer has the specs for it. So it just doesn't matter. Just download it and try it out. But yeah, I think probably Spin could probably type some other resources in the chat about like editing software that are like free or cheap, that are not just like Apple based. But those are the ones I know.
Thank you. I'm wondering if anybody knows if there are any organizations in the Twin Cities that are specifically working with older people in teaching some of this. You know, Sabathani Center or somebody, I don't know. I bet that's fundable. Like, I want to hear the stories.
When you're funding, what are you wanting to learn? Like video or puppetry or storytelling or?
Yeah, like I just had to get a new Android phone because they're shutting down 3G. So like I do not keep up with the technology until I'm forced kicking and screaming. And so the new phone that I got, it's also a Samsung low level. It should have pretty much the same kind of interface, but it's like the experience is different. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, just like a technology hand holder and bridging the gap of confidence. Like probably if I just looked at the user manual, you'd be like, oh, I see. But it's barriers, you know.
I wonder if that's something that SPNN has CTAP AmeriCorps members stationed in a lot of different nonprofits across the Twin Cities and adult basic education workforce centers. And their whole purpose is to help people with technology. If you want to send me an email after this to remind me, I can try to see if there's a particular site that works with that kind of technology that I could direct you to, that you would be able to, and I just put my email in the chat, but and we can help try to connect you with someone who would be able to help you with your phone and stuff. As far as like some video stuff, I mean, at SPN, we're happy to work with any ages, and we do everything from youth to older adults. I know that Film North has a program that they're doing with 55 plus with documentary as well. And so that might be something that you could be, it's very specifically oriented towards 55-year-olds plus. So it's, it might be something that's a little less intimidating, but at SPN, we also will do one-on-one work with folks. So we'll try to meet you wherever you're at with technology.
Also, I would say if you want to learn puppetry, I think a great way to learn is through the community build. So I know that Bare Bones is a annual Halloween puppet show that happens in the fall in Minneapolis.
I've been to that.
Yeah, Kathy, maybe you know about it. Yeah, but they go ahead.
It was awesome the time I went. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know that they have. I know they need support in building puppets, and so I think that's a great way to learn. Again, that's how I first learned was through Heart of the Beast and Bare Bones. Just being there, making paper mache and using, and definitely, Mayday when they return. I think they're working specifically with like schools this year, but I bet maybe the schools need some community support too. I'm not sure.
I will let you know. I'm kind of, and I'll let you know. I'll let y'all know.
Thank you. Yeah, Mayday. I mean, oh, Mayday. I need Mayday.
Oh, it's coming back. It's coming back. Just it's in a different form, you know.
All right, I see this. Shania just asked, jumping off that, what other tips or resources do you all recommend for people who are curious about puppetry and want to get involved?
Yo, I just seen in my like community education pamphlet that they're actually doing puppet making and like filmmaking and all these other courses for people. So like definitely check your community education adult book because they got like some really dope programs going on right now.
Yeah, some other things that come to mind. Correct me if I'm wrong on this name. It was Chicago Puppet Fest that was putting on workshops for a while there, and they do that annually, if I remember correctly. That's a good resource. I don't remember what pricing looks like on that, but I know that they have like some low income options, so it's pretty accessible. I would also say, and I don't know what the status of this is right now, so this is just kind of a keep your eyes peeled thing, but the Puppet Cabaret has been really helpful for a lot of people. That operates out of Heart of the Beast Theater, and Steve Ackerman and Akiko Austin put that on. And I mean, I think puppetry is a pretty welcoming and accessible form generally, but I would say particularly Puppet Cabaret is just like, no experience, great, come make a show and we'll help you. So I would definitely recommend that. And then maybe like one step, not above, but like one step, I guess, more towards intermediate, and even advanced would be Full Moon, would be another good jumping off point after Puppet Cabaret or Bare Bones or some of these other experiences. I see we're already talking about Full Moon. Cool. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for me.
I would also say, not only do you want to just like, if you want to like make puppets and learn how to do that, I would also say like watch a lot of puppet shows, because like this is something I'm constantly doing. Because like I feel like I know how to make stuff, but still like the puppetry storytelling is like very unique, right? And you just don't see it. Like I watch tons of TV shows and movies. That stuff is like, you know, like you got a lot of content there, but watching a puppet show is harder, right? So handmade puppet films is like something that it's like the granddaughter or daughter, I forget, of Jim Henson, who did like the Muppets. They've got this like this great program where they make puppet films, and you can watch them, and they come out like every quarterly. You can also you can rent them online, unfortunately through Amazon. Maybe there's like another site you can rent them through. Maybe you can just do it through the website. But handmade puppet films, or just go locally and see puppet films. Theater, especially the cabarets, are cheap. But once you start seeing the things, like that's the cool thing about puppetry, is like you can kind of figure out how to do it. And puppeteers are very like generous. So if you watch a show and you like just say, "Oh, how'd you make that?" They'll like, "Oh yeah, come," like they'll nerd out with you. I'm one of those people. I'm like, "Let me show you how I made this or did this," you know. So yeah, just ask if you go to a show. And if you're a person of color, Monkey Bear Melodic Workshop is a great way. They've got a training intensive where you learn how to do puppetry, and then you get mentorship for 6 months to make a show yourself.
Have we sated everyone's curiosity? Are we running out of questions?
I can ask a question. So I was wondering if there are any particular artists who inspire your practice, whether locally or internationally known, or just anyone.
I can go. I have like 5. Steve Ackerman is definitely one of my favorites of like all time. He's out of the Heart of the Beast. Janata Petrus, Ineffable Space, who's here. Who else? Oh, Masa. I forgot Masa's last name, but like he's a fucking genius for real, for real. And one more. I had what was my fifth? Masa. Oh, Sandy Spieler. That's my OG. Out of Heart of the Beast. Definitely a mentor of mine. She was the one that told me that I can do this actual shit that I'm doing now. And she really ignited that fire for me. So definitely Sandy Spieler.
Yeah, I can hop into. I'm gonna give two answers. On the puppetry side of things, I would definitely say Liz Howells, Chimindika, who runs Monkey Bear, Kurt Hunter, who is just a freaking genius. What would the word be? Marionette? Would that be the word? But like taught me how to make marionettes from like quality materials, right? From like wood and foam and builder's paper for mache instead of just like paper bags. And he really helped me kind of level up the craft a little bit. Yeah, and then I would say, I'm probably forgetting someone, but then I would say on the writing side of things, picture books, I would definitely say Baufi was a huge inspiration for me. Gosh, who are my other picture book inspirations? Getting anxious, running a blank. Oh, John Coy, Molly Beth Griffin, lots of local authors who have been doing topic-based kids books, right? Things that are like a layer deeper than, The Hungry Caterpillar, for example. Yeah, those are my inspirations.
I think currently I'm like obsessed with Taika Waititi. He is a like writer, director, actor. He did Hunt for the Wilder People, Jojo Rabbit, Boy, that show What We Do in the Shadows, like the vampire show. And I really like him because he's, in terms of his like what his films are about, they're always like balancing really funny moments with like very serious, kind of sad, intense stuff. And I think that just like really speaks to me because oftentimes I am trying to talk about serious things, but sometimes like the sadness cuts deeper when it's like just happens after something really funny. So I think he's like just a master with tone. I'm like obsessed with his work now. And also, if you watch any of his interviews, he's incredibly entertaining and super charismatic. So yeah, he's got a lot of good advice to give. He's an inspiration as of late. And then Michel Gondry, it's kind of like, it's a little like, I don't know. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember when I was young, I would watch a lot of his films because they're it's like stop motion and kind of like otherworldly and really fantastical. And he uses really simple materials. So he's got this film, Be Kind, Rewind, which is about just a group of people. It stars Mos Def. They live in a community and their VHS rental place is being replaced. And all of the tapes get like erased. And so they remake all the videos just using like simple materials. So it's just super funny. And it's like clearly he like is kind of a puppeteer, but not a puppeteer, right? So I really like Michel Gondry in terms of filmmakers. And then, you know what, Disney, I know they're problematic, but they're doing a lot of good stuff. Encanto, Turning Red, they're just really strong storytelling, visual storytelling films, and they're very engaging and they're simple, but they're like, at least those two are really, I don't know, deep. And then lastly, in terms of puppeteers, yeah, of course, Liz Howells is amazing. And if you're interested in shadow puppetry, check out Manual Cinema. They're based out of Chicago, and they're using overhead projectors to do some really cool puppetry, and also Nightshade. They do like puppetry as well, but it's very cinematic and yeah, and very 3D. So if you can try to check them out, I would. Yeah.
A great list. I've got my homework. Yeah.
I'm gonna go follow all these people on Instagram after this.
Yeah, seriously, I follow so many people on Instagram if you do social media, and it's like constantly just getting ideas from people.
I follow Linda Barry, kind of the Ernie Pooks comic, and Marvelous, and anyway, she teaches at UW-Madison and stuff. I get
Yes.
inspiration from her. Like anybody can draw, like just put it down.
Oh, Linda Barry. Yeah, she wrote that comic 100 Demons, right? I love, yeah, her work is super cool. Comics are also like very visual and related to filmmaking and puppetry as well.
Thanks so much for sharing and for like convening this today and having the showcase. And it's such a great, great highlight. I appreciate your work.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah.
Well, shucks. Thank you, y'all. I say it in a jokey voice, but I'm being sincere. Thank you.
Yeah, 2 hours is a lot, y'all. Thank you for being engaged and like hearing us blather.
Yeah, super loyal for that, for real, for real. I appreciate it, dude. And I don't get the opportunity to speak about puppets a lot because my friends kind of think it's like, what are you doing? But this is my love, so I get to nerd out with puppeteers. So it's a good day.
Yeah, thanks. Just while we're giving thanks to my fellow performers too. I feel like my life has been a little bit like taken over by writing stuff lately, and so this felt like returning to my roots and like really getting to embrace this part of myself, and I've really enjoyed that.
As just a concluding sort of note, I was wondering if you would all be comfortable putting your contact information or where people in this panel can see more of your work.
Space there.
I always like to remind people at the end of a video, like I'm going to hold it open for 1 more minute so you can make sure to save the chat because I know sometimes I'm scrambling. It's like, oh no, they're closing it.
Yes, if anyone else wants to put anything in the chat for us to see, that's your time. But yeah, I mean, thank you everyone for coming to this panel. It's a great event, I think. So yes.
Yeah, thanks for having us spin. Thanks for doing a media and puppetry panel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see too many of those.
We like to be different.
So thanks, y'all. This was truly an honor, and thanks for letting me go off the rails with it a little bit. Appreciate y'all for that.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Peace, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Shanae's still here.
I'm gonna just stop the recording.